Sorry, I'm going late a little bit later than 11, but yeah. Hold on. Let me fix. Alright. Oh my god, I'm tired. That was my fault for not sleeping well, so my eyes are burning. I got coffee making, brewing on that. Oh, how's everybody? How's everybody? Give me a second. Let me go get some coffee, and I'll be right back. Okay. Alright, I'm back. I got my coffee. Another night of Oh shoot. Yeah, just another night of scary shit. I guess part two. So let's get this shit started.
Ease and Dell, SCP Foundation Pathology Department, concerning the ongoing progression of patient Vernon Gilbreth,
Mm.
male, 34 years of age, 5 feet 9 inches, approximately 140 pounds. The patient was apprehended in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, after the death of the previous instance of SCP-1086-1.
Yeah.
Gilbreth seems to have contracted a particularly aggressive variant of the anomalous disease known as SCP-1086, codenamed Second Brain Syndrome. But this statement perhaps runs the risk of being misleading. After all, there are no real cases of SCP-1086 that can be described as non-aggressive. Gilbreth was brought into my operating room approximately 3 hours ago, a mere hour after the expiration of the previous subject. This was a rare swing of fortune in our favor, giving my colleagues and me time to don our biohazard level 4 blue suits, strictly mandated by protocol only in stage 3. I've learned to put them on in advance out of an abundance of caution, especially after the unfortunate incident that claimed the life of junior researcher.
Oh
We
shit.
wasted no time in binding Mr. Gilbreth to the table with reinforced medical restraints. An increase in strength is not one of the typical symptoms of SCP-1086, but given the virulence of the condition, we take no chances here.
Gosh.
You can see some of the ravages of Stage 1 are already beginning to go into effect.
Got you.
SCP-1086 is a bacterial pathogen, not a virus, which I cannot stress enough. As you can see from Mr. Gilbreth's extreme discomfort, the first stage of symptoms is marked by a devastating immunosuppressive effect, something normally observed only in the latter stages of conditions like acquired immunodeficiency syndrome in humans.
Got you.
At this stage, Mr. Gilbreth also maintains most of his mental faculties, which accounts for the screaming, the crying, the groaning,
And the commercials.
and the begging to be let go. Never a particularly cheerful sound, of course.
Hold on for a second. Let's try this
These are
again.
the recorded notes of Dr. Randall
What is
C.
going on?
Turkmenistan, a Central Asian nation. These are the recorded notes of Dr.
Um,
Randall C. Zindel, SCP Foundation. Strength is not one of
Okay.
the typical symptoms of SCP-1086.
Sorry about that.
Given the violence of the condition, we take no chances here. As you can see, some of the ravages of Stage 1 are already beginning to go. SCP-1086 is a bacterial pathogen, not a virus, which I cannot stress enough. As you can see from Mr. Gilbreth's extreme discomfort, the first stage of symptoms is marked by a devastating immunosuppressive effect, something normally observed only in the latter stages of conditions like acquired immunodeficiency syndrome in humans. At this stage, Mr. Gilbreth also maintains most of his mental faculties.
Hold on for a
which
second.
accounts for the screaming, the crying, the groaning, and the begging to be let go.
Hold on for a second. Let me go get my stuff so it could charge. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back. Alright, let's do it.
Never a particularly cheerful sound, of course, but at this stage I recommended my colleagues to simply tune out and not engage with anything Mr. Gilbreth is saying. While it is our job to extend the last tortured hours of his life,
Yeah.
the psychological benefit of the SCP-1086 management team, I find that it's healthiest to conceptualize patients like Mr. Gilbreth as already dead. They just haven't come to realize it yet. We use fabric shears to remove the patient's clothes, despite their protests. Given that the earliest salvo of pathogenic attacks from SCP-1086 was already manifesting, it was, in my humble opinion, a regrettable, necessary breach of the patient's state. As you can see from these recordings, the immunosuppressant effect first manifests in the development of dermatological disorders that advance with increasing severity. Observe the severe rashes and pockmarks developed across Mr. Gilbreth's body. which I imagine range from incredibly uncomfortable to severely painful.
Mm.
As we've noted with other patients suffering from the earlier stages of SCP-1086, there are interesting anomalous patterns of the rashes and lesions on Mr. Gilbreth's skin. You can see ranges of blisters here that look almost like crop circles, consistent with presentations of sacred geometry, primal symbols lurking in the human psychosphere. During the earliest instances of SCP-1086, this was the dead giveaway that showed us we weren't dealing with any old bacterial infection. There is a certain disconcerting, well, intelligence at play here.
Okay.
This will manifest further in later stages. Here we can
Alright.
see Mr. Gilbreth begging to be put out of his misery, or, at the least, be permitted to itch. We've learned from this mistake before. Patients in the first stage of SCP-1086 who have been allowed to itch have historically not stopped itching until their fingernails reach muscle tissue or, in some extreme cases, bone. This has invariably resulted in blood loss and increased risk of fatal infection, which is not a desirable outcome here given the mandate to keep these SCP-1086-1 specimens alive for as long as possible. To that end, you can see my colleagues here preparing to apply skin grafts, which are typically required for a patient to even hope of surviving the first stage of the illness. Old infected tissue is cut out and removed, and healthy skin is overlaid, though of course it doesn't take long for that to become infected too. As a courtesy, we give patients like Mr. Gilbreth what Terence McKenna might have described as a heroic dose of a special painkiller cocktail, to take at least some of the agony off of their deteriorating shoulders. Naturally, we also infuse large doses of antivirals and antibiotics, which helps compensate for the ruination of Mr. Gilbreth's immune system. But we've consistently seen that it will have no effect on SCP-1086 itself. Treatment here can only be symptomatic, and that applies really only to the elements that it has in common with non-anomalous diseases. What happens next is considerably stranger. Mr. Gilbreth is now experiencing severe respiratory issues, strained breathing, an uncomfortable hacking cough. These are the telltale signs that the true centerpiece of SCP-1086 infection is beginning. During vivisections, we've seen that the buildup, the eye,
Yeah.
appeared to be a mucosal buildup not unlike phlegm.
Ew.
A college degree program? There's a college in there. Hey, I just deliver life upgrades. Sign here.
A mucosal buildup not unlike phlegm. But that couldn't be further from the truth. You see, MRI scans have shown us that the gelatinous blob forming in the chest of SCP-1086-1 instances will rapidly form a parasitic relationship with the nervous system of the body, effectively giving it a second seat of control, a second brain, if you will, with its own purposes and intentions. And in order to sustain the kind of development that takes almost 2 decades in humans, this second brain begins to pillage the body of its host. As we can see happening here with Mr. Gilbreth, you see the immunosuppressant quality of SCP-1086 is merely a side effect of the infection's ultimate intention. SCP-1086 takes the body's leukocytes, commonly known as white blood cells, and converts them into pluripotent forms, similar to bone marrow stem cells. It then centralizes these leukocytes within itself, transforming them into neuronal tissue and forming powerful synaptic connections that quickly make it a formidable mental entity. As you can see on the unfortunate Mr. Gilbreth here, this process is incredibly taxing on the body. In order to generate energy required for this kind of chemical conversion, it raids Mr. Gilbreth's lipid, or fat reserves, causing rapid and concerning weight loss that makes him appear utterly emaciated within a matter of mere hours. This is why my colleagues have fitted Mr. Gilbreth with various intravenous tubes in order to infuse him with enough nutrients to offset the rapid loss from the transformation going on inside him. It must be stressed that despite the pain, the deformation, and the skin grafts, despite the rapid changes in his body, Mr. Gilbreth's mind is still very much his own at this point. It's why he keeps asking what's going on and whether he'll be able to see his family again. We don't see fit to give him the real answer to either of these questions, as it's likely to cause undue mental distress. For the rest of the first stage, we'll continue to manage Mr. Gilbreth's symptoms in order to keep him alive and imperative for several reasons. His pain will go well into the night, and it strains my commitment to the Hippocratic Oath. If I must forsake the rod of Asclepius, I can at least comfort myself considering this whole dreadful scenario from a utilitarian perspective. If Mr. Gilbreth did not suffer, then his suffering would be passed on to so many others due to some of the unique communicative vectors of SCP-1086. We shall endure. May God have mercy on all of our souls. These are the recorded notes of Dr. Randall C. Zindel, SCP Foundation Pathology Department. We are now approximately 18 hours into the treatment of patient Vernon Gilbreth, an instance of SCP-1086-1. I now believe that he has met the diagnostic criteria to have entered Stage 2 of the condition's 3 progressive stages. Needless to say, the effects on Mr. Gilbreth have been disturbing and stark, as is to be expected from this particular anomalous bacterial infection. As you can see from Mr. Gilbreth's largely incoherent stream of consciousness ramblings, the neurological symptoms have begun to set in. This sudden cognitive decline is accompanied by a severe fever that further endangers the health of the subject and forces us to take preventative measures. We are applying cooling gels intended to bring Mr. Gilbreth's temperature back to, frankly, survivable levels. You may notice that despite the incoherent content of the things that Mr. Gilbreth is saying, he's speaking clearly and calmly, as though what he's saying makes perfect sense to him. This seems to be another consistent factor in all cases of SCP-1086 infection early in Stage 2. Of course, you may also notice a certain consistency in the ramblings. Mr. Gilbreth keeps claiming in different variations that he is lost, though admittedly to say that Mr. Gilbreth is saying this is likely a misnomer. A more accurate way of putting it would be to say that it is being said using Mr. Gilbreth's mouth, but the thought forming the words are coming from the growing mass of neurological tissue inside of Mr. Gilbreth's chest. Increasingly, it appears as though the second brain is running the show here, leaving us an uncertain state of what exactly Mr. Gilbreth is experiencing right now. Is he conscious? Is he aware of what is being taken from him every second? Looking through eyes and hearing through ears the words and actions he no longer commands? Personally, I hope that this isn't the case, and that these periods are little more than dreamless sleep to him. That's all I can hope. During the periods where Mr. Gilbreth is in control, our MRI and CAT scans show the second brain sending increasingly powerful neurological signals. He perceives these signals as loud, drowning music, seemingly believing it plays diegetically within the decontamination chamber, even though none of us can hear a sound. He will also complain about myself and my colleagues mumbling and whispering to him, despite us not sharing a word. It seems as though this stage is a kind of neurological battle for dominance, where the second brain wages war on the original mind and personality of Mr. Gilbreth in an attempt to wrest the full control of his ailing body. Sadly, based on prior experiences with SCP-1086-1 instances, I can say that this battle is always one-sided. As the subject's body degrades, so too does the fortitude of their mind, gradually becoming a weak barrier that the neurological force of the parasite can easily burst through. A weak barrier that the neurological force of the parasite can easily burst through. Yet again, whether the original personality is completely erased or simply sublimated into some deep, dark place is honestly more of a philosophical question than one that we can fully answer medically or psychologically. And to think, the worst for Mr. Gilbreth is still yet to come. These are the recorded notes of Dr. Randall C. Zindel, SCP Foundation Pathology Department. Forgive me if I sound particularly stressed in this present recording. All diagnostic criteria point to Mr. Gilbreth entering the third and ultimate stage of SCP-1086 infection. This is always an extremely risky part of the process for myself and my colleagues, but one in which is extra important for us to pay close attention. Here, it is unambiguous that on the level of consciousness, Mr. Gilbreth is effectively dead. We have observed the rapid decay of his cerebral tissue, consistent with an extremely aggressive, fast-acting form of dementia. This tissue is gradually being overtaken by the secondary brain, SCP-1086-2, a gelatinous mass in his torso that continues to enlarge. As you can see, it now visibly bulges within his chest, accounting for the unusually convex configuration of his ribs. The body of Mr. Gilbreth will continue to speak hysterically. We believe this to be SCP-1086-2 frantically asking for help from us, as though the entity itself takes no joy in this whole situation. Between the largely incoherent begging, the anomaly repeats a name, always a name, along with a series of numbers that we have become experienced at converting into the coordinates of a location somewhere here on Earth. This will be repeated on the hour for several hours before the body of Mr. Gilbreth enters a horrific coughing fit. At the conclusion of this fit, the man's body will disgorge the huge and infectious mass of SCP-1086-2, which is incredibly infectious if engaged without our level of hazmat protection. Approximately 6 hours after the projectile vomiting the mass from his body, Mr. Guth enters a comatose state and dies. But this is not the end, just the beginning of a new cycle. Despite
What?
working on this case for decades, we still haven't been able to solidify the
What you
mechanism
mean?
by which this next part happens. 12 hours after the death of the previous subject, in this case Mr. Gilbreth, the individual identified by SCP-1086-2 at the precise previously indicated coordinates will spontaneously become infected with SCP-1086. Mobile task forces must then triangulate this location and reach the subject before it is too late. The work we do is important here, even if others in the chain of command believe that management of SCP-1086 is a resource sink. A site-wide memo was sent out by my superior earlier in the week, reading, "Some concerns have been raised regarding the extensive commitment of personnel and material required to the containment of a single individual. It should be remembered that the priority here is speed. SCP-1086-1 instances become contagious within 6 hours of initial infection, giving 25 hours total of advance warning to stop a potential epidemic. Additionally, containment may require seizing control of a specialized biocontainment lab in complete secrecy before administering amnestics to dozens or hundreds of witnesses. Budgetary concerns are secondary. There has, of course, been one incident of mass infection in the history of this case, hasn't there? Yes. And it was the incident where we first discovered this pathogen, perhaps even the incident where it was first introduced to planet Earth. The 1994 Oakville, Washington case, where blobs of gelatinous matter carrying the SCP-1086 pathogen rained down from the sky and infected a large number of individuals across the town. It started as a curiosity at first, not dissimilar from those perennial stories of fish raining from the sky after a tornado, until, of course, people started to fall ill. Given the number of out-of-town tourists and reporters that had converged on the town following the news of the incident first breaking, we were phenomenally lucky that things didn't get far worse than this. For that, we can also thank the speedy intervention of Foundation field agents in locating and containing the infected individuals, and MTF Gamma 5, our tactical specialized misinformation division. It's thanks to their work that the only history books that will feature the Oakville incident are Ripley's Believe It or Not. But so many questions still hang in the air. The questions that haunt me in the quiet evenings between this endless game of whack-a-mole we're playing with these infection cases. Did this bacteria come to us from beyond the stars? And did chance bring it here? Or its own intelligence? And if the latter is true, we're left with the ultimate question. What does SCP-1086 want with us?
No joke.
Is it getting it? Now go check out What If Your Gaming Skills Were This Good? SCP-1875 Antique Chess Computer, or SCP-377 Scared Me to Death. Accurate.
Next one with
Yes,
Dr.
there are
Bob.
multiple ways of making a profit on Rainbow.
Okay.
One of which is my favorite, is you get paid.
The last time Nicky missed a repayment, the loan sharks took his car. The
Oh.
next time, they assured him they'd take his knees. And these
What
were
the
the
hell?
kinds of men who made jokes about their intentions. This was enough motivation to take the advice of his buddy Silvio, the advice that had him wandering down an unfamiliar back alley in the middle of the night. Silvio told him to watch for the sign. He'd know it when he sees it. Silvio said the guy was a miracle worker, someone who could make your luck do a 180 whenever he wanted. This miracle worker was the one who helped Silvio get back on his feet after his mother died, and now Silvio had a McMansion in the suburbs and a Mustang convertible. But could anyone be enough of a miracle worker to turn Nicky's luck around? He blinked, and he was in a dark room. He didn't remember walking into this room, but his memory had been spotty these days. Probably a combination of the stress, the booze, and the uppers. The room was sleek and minimalist, dominated by 3 objects: a wooden chair, a grand mahogany desk, and another chair behind it. No, chair didn't feel like the right word. It was more of a throne, with a brass frame and royal purple padding. Nicky had this vague idea that someone told him to take a seat when he'd been led into the room, so he obliged, sitting on the more humble wooden chair across from the desk.
Run a bad luck, eh, Nicky?
The voice startled him, and he looked up to see a stranger now occupying the throne across the desk. He was a thin man with an angular face, dark hair slicked back, wearing an expensive-looking pinstripe suit. The man smiled. Something about him made Nicky itch.
I didn't tell you my name.
Nicky said.
You told my receptionist on the way in,
Said the stranger without missing a beat.
do keep up. So, what brings you to my little corner of the world? Nobody ends up across my desk if life's been a ray of sunshine.
Nicky scratched the back of his head, avoiding eye contact with the man across the desk. His dark eyes seemed to look right through Nicky, as though someone was standing behind him.
I made a few bad investments.
He said. The stranger's smile seemed to widen at that.
Investments? That's what we're calling them, are we?
He really could see right through Nicky.
Some bad bets
He clarified.
at the tracks. And then I borrowed some money and made a few more bad bets, and now
His mind suddenly assailed by thoughts of beatings, mutilations, of his bullet-riddled body showing up on a riverbank somewhere.
I'm in some trouble.
The stranger opened a drawer in his desk and took out not a piece of paper, but what looked like a scroll of honest-to-God parchment, along with some Harry Potter-style quill pen and an inkwell. Nicky had to stop himself from laughing out loud at the absurdity of it.
Lucky for you, Nicky, trouble is my specialty.
He said, dripping the end of his quill in the inkwell.
No hole is too deep, that's what I always say. But when you're in that hole, you're really in no position to critique the rope that gets thrown down to you, are you?
He wasn't really sure he followed, but he nodded along anyway.
When your friend Silvio came to me, he was in a pretty rough state, too. Expensive habits, that man. Fast cars, loose women, the indigent's chariot. Thankfully, I was able to get him on the right track. How is his mother?
Nicky cocked his head.
She died. Short illness, I think.
The stranger seemed to suppress a smirk at that, before forcing a sympathetic frown.
Of course, nothing wrong. So many irons in the fire, it's easy to forget a few.
The stranger began to frantically scrawl on the parchment, occasionally refreshing the ink on the quill's tip. Nicky couldn't make out the words from where he was sitting, but he had to admit that despite the speed at which the stranger was writing, his penmanship seemed beautiful.
I like you, Nicky. You remind me of myself in some ways.
He said, not turning his dark eyes away from the parchment.
The big difference is that you pick slow horses. I don't. Thankfully, I can help you there.
Nicky straightened up in his chair. He was worried that this would be yet another loan shark, offering him temporary relief in exchange for having another dangerous creditor. He'd learned the hard way that taking the Ponzi scheme approach to paying off loan sharks was a good way to get killed.
5 names.
The stranger said.
Horses, I mean. That's my offer. Long odds, too, so you'll get a big payout if you're willing to roll high. How can you possibly know that?
Nicky asked. The stranger paused and looked up. He spoke with such an eerie certainty that it genuinely chilled Nicky to the bone. The simple words,
I know.
there would be no follow-up questions.
And I'm fair.
The stranger said, as he continued to write what must have been a contract on the parchment.
I'll give you 5 names, and in return, 5 names are all I ask for. Couldn't get more equitable than that. 5 names? Names of what?
The stranger shrugged.
Books, movies, places, casual acquaintances.
Nicky had no idea why he was taking such an insane claim seriously, but some sour feeling deep in his gut told him that this was for real. He needed to make sure that he wouldn't get screwed here.
No close friends, no family members, and I don't want to forget my name either.
That made the stranger smile, enough to show off his strangely crooked teeth.
You're good. I knew there was a reason I liked you. You have my word. Those are all off limits.
The stranger's scrawlings had reached the bottom of the parchment, where he drew a straight line before turning the parchment around and pushing it across the desk towards Nicky. It outlined the exact deal they'd just discussed. The names of 5 winning horses in exchange for 5 names from Nicky, excluding family, close friends, and his own name. It seemed like a fair deal.
Just write you John Hancock across the line, and will be in business,
the stranger said.
this could be the first.
Ah, I'm into this one. This one is not too scary. Not yet.
Stranger said.
This could be the first day of the rest of your life.
The part of him that had been brought up Catholic was screaming at him to tear up the paper and run out of the room. The part of him that didn't want to end up sinking in the local bay wearing the latest release from Nike Concrete knew that wasn't an option. Nicky took the quill and signed his name.
Good choice, Fred.
The stranger said.
For once, you bet on the right horse.
Part of him expected it all to be some sick joke, until he bet what little money he had left on the first horse on the stranger's list. It wasn't the favorite, not even close. So when it won, and won big, Nicky suddenly had an incredible payout waiting for him. When he paid that money forward and bet on the second horse, he soon had a small fortune, enough to pay back the shark with interest. He took what's left to bet on the third horse, who once again won and tripled Nicky's fortune. Everything the stranger said had been true. Silvio's recommendation had saved Nicky's life and improved it beyond measure. But in all his excitement, Nicky never once wondered whether Silvio got back on his feet after his mother died, or because his mother died. If he had made that connection, he might not have made the deal, and his life might have turned out differently. Of course, the repayments were being made too. He couldn't even hope to remember the lead actor's name from his favorite movie. Even when he was staring at their IMDb page, the name was a fuzzy, unreadable mess. He looked like a moron in conversation when he couldn't remember the president's name either. But he was willing to take that hit to his pride in conversation as his bank account got fatter and fatter. And what felt a little petty, he lost the name Jack Daniels, and thus his favorite drink order too. With 2 bets left, the world was Nicky's oyster. After the fourth horse, his wealth became obscene, though he forgot the name of his accountant, which made keeping track of it all a little awkward. Still, there were plenty of accountants out there. He could make do. The last name on the list seemed almost to taunt him. He'd accumulated such wealth now that he didn't really need that last bet, and perhaps if he let that race lapse, he wouldn't lose another name. But the more he thought about it, the more it seemed like a deal he couldn't lose. One more incidental name, and he'd have more money than he could ever spend. He'd bankrupt the bookies and go home laughing.
Why not?
Nicky made that 5th bet and felt like a god when the horse that nobody else believed in cleared those gates like greased lightning. The winnings were astronomical. The terms of the deal were complete. Now, Nicky could celebrate. And that night, he really did. He bought a round for everyone at the bar and partied so hard he could barely stand, let alone drive. So that night, he decided to stagger home, singing to himself, knowing that from now on, he was living life on Easy Street. Except while wandering down one isolated street a few blocks from his home, he was accosted by a mugger with a .38 special. It seemed that Nicky was a little too slow to deliver his wallet, and before he knew it, he was laying out in the gutter with 2 bullet wounds in his torso, bleeding profusely. But as Nicky's luck would have it, the mugger didn't take his cell phone. He was able to wrestle it out of his pocket with fingers that were rapidly going numb and call the emergency services, saying that he'd been shot and needed an ambulance immediately.
Please give me your location, sir, and we'll send someone right over.
The dispatcher said with clear urgency.
I'm on.
Nicky's tongue seemed to stall in his mouth. It was so simple, he just needed to tell them he was on... Oh no. He couldn't remember the name of the street he was laying in.
Sir? Excuse me, sir?
I'm on. Oh no.
As the phone tumbled out of Nicky's hand, he could swear that somewhere he could hear the stranger from across the desk laughing as his eyes fluttered closed and everything went cold. One should never expect a positive result from a Faustian bargain, even if you've never read Marlowe or Goethe. Many civilians who made the mistake of encountering SCP-738, also known as the Devil's Deal, have learned this the hard way. To the untrained eye, this anomaly is little more than a collection of furniture. A simple chair in front of a mahogany desk with an ornate throne-style chair behind it. Without a human component, nothing anomalous would even occur here. But when you add a human element, inherently mired in biases, fears, and desires, a kind of terrible magic begins to occur. Any sentient being that sits in the unadorned chair will enter a negotiation with a mysterious and powerful entity that appears in the throne. What this entity looks like will differ entirely from person to person, but will always take a form that the person trusts. Interestingly, the being can only be viewed subjectively by the person in the negotiation. It remains invisible and intangible to any incidental observers. All we can see when studying interactions with SCP-738 are the parchment, the quill pen, and the inkwell floating out of the desk and seeming to write of their own volition. By the way, we have been able to collect some samples of the parchment and have since discovered that it's made out of human skin. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised. Of course, as one can expect when making a deal with a being of a demonic nature, it generally isn't worth the human skin paper it's printed on. You'll get what you were promised to the exact letter, but what's taken from you, though, will often be substantially more, with the entity seeming to take a stereotypically sadistic pleasure in screwing over desperate people with cunning and malicious loopholes. Surprisingly,
Got you.
or perhaps unsurprisingly, depending on your perspective, SCP-738
excuse me.
was found in the office of a Catholic cardinal, a gift given to him directly by the then Pope in exchange for his extraordinary service. We don't have records of the deals made by the Pope or the Cardinal, but we do have documentation of 7 separate tests conducted by the Foundation using a mix of D-Class personnel and researchers.
What if rent could pay itself? Dropshipping with Ollie Dropship is simple.
I wish, bro. I wish.
A mix of D-Class personnel and researchers. Further testing was
What happened?
halted, as the entity's incredible reality warping powers made it far too dangerous to continue. It should be noted that all of the D-classes used in SCP-738 testing are united by one factor, either incredibly stunted psychological development or scoring extraordinarily low on intelligence scores. This choice, while ethically questionable to some degree, was made with the intention of making sure that nobody with potential anti-Foundation intent would have the wherewithal to realize the destructive power they're being handed. In the first of the tests, the researcher sat on the chair, at which point a man in a red and gold business suit manifested and began making extravagant promises to make his research career an incredible success, to advance him to the position of the O5 Council. Thankfully for all of us, the researcher was able to recognize that all that glitters is not gold, and he sped out of the room, ending the deal before it could truly begin. Others who did not show his restraint were not so lucky. The next test was on a D-Class, who reported that the entity manifested as a beautiful and seductive woman. He was promised freedom from the facility in exchange for the death of his best friend, and took the deal. Another D-Class spontaneously died in the facility, and the one who'd taken the deal vanished. Of course, the entity hadn't done an excellent job of hiding him, so he was discovered and recaptured in a nearby town later that afternoon. At this point, it likely would have made sense to cut our losses and stop testing, but the lead researchers on the case decided not to go in that particular direction, and instead brought in another D-Class.
Why?
This time, the entity offered him the power to never be held in containment ever again, in exchange for the memories of his deceased mother. The deal was accepted, and the D-Class was given monstrous strength, which resulted in a brutal fight that caused the deaths of 12 members of personnel, along with the D-Class himself. Researchers chose to put a particularly intellectually disabled D-Class into the testing chamber for the next one, and the entity seemed to take this as an opportunity to twist the knife. He tricked the D-Class into a deal for a delicious meal in exchange for the D-Class's comfort toy, a stuffed rabbit named Mopsy. When the deal was struck, a fancy meal manifested, and Mopsy disappeared, causing serious distress for the D-Class. Because he seemed so inconsolable, researchers invested in another identical rabbit toy to give to the D-Class. But as soon as he named the toy Mopsy, it disappeared again, as per the terms of the entity's deal. Due to the fact that that felt particularly mean-spirited, even for a demon, the Foundation decided to make the next test some good old-fashioned destruction testing, attacking it through various means. The only one that actually seemed to damage any of the furniture was an attack from an axe, which caused the attacker to immediately die after the first swing. The furniture has begun to slowly heal from its wounds over the coming days. In the next test, they hope to discover the identity of the being behind all this. A researcher instigated a new negotiation and asked simply, "Who are you?" In response, the entity took the form of a giant, terrifying snake and said,
I'm sorry, it's against policy to divulge personal details.
He then offered something to the researcher that caused an immediate nervous breakdown. He's still in a psychiatric facility to this day. Perhaps the most interesting test of all was when the Foundation sent in Sheldon Katz Esquire, senior counsel with the Foundation's legal department. His extensive knowledge of contract law would put the SCP-738 entity against a foe on equal footing. This turned out to be a fascinating decision, as the entity appeared in the form of a particularly challenging law professor from Katz's undergrad course. The two negotiated for 41 straight hours, creating a contract of over 900 pages before Katz passed out from exhaustion in the middle of arguing the exact definition of the word shall. There were actually no adverse consequences to this, as the entity left a note in a red leather envelope reading, "Please come back anytime. I haven't had so much fun in years. Mr. Katz has not expressed interest in doing so." Thanks to the sterling work of the SCP Foundation, it's highly unlikely that you'll ever sit across from SCP-738 and be in a position where a bad choice of words irreparably destroys life as you know it. But if you do find yourself preparing to accept a deal from anyone soon, remember a little piece of advice from your good friend Dr. Bob. The devil's in the details. Oh boy, that one really sticks with you, huh?
Mm-hmm.
On a lighter note, one of my favorite voice actors, Joe Cliff Thompson, has joined a new project called Redacted. It's a paranormal investigation
John
drama.
Cliff
If you like these
Thompson.
SCP stories or need a little bit more mystery in your life,
Yeah.
I think you'll really like it. Incidentally, some people have mentioned that Joe and I sound a lot alike, but frankly, I don't know if I hear it. But don't take my word for it, though. Go and take a listen, and then tell me in the comments if you hear a similarity. And then go watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-715, My Face That I May Be, another tale involving odd similarities between individuals.
Ooh. Ooh.
I just hit the jackpot and won an ultra rare one.
Ooh.
Site called Box.gg.
It's not every day that the SCP Foundation opens a brand new site and appoints a new site director, but today is one of those days. Work is about to begin at Site 41, and a respected senior researcher has been appointed director of the brand new site. He hasn't been told much about it yet, but he knows a few things for certain. Some sort of new was discovered, was constructed around it, and his many years of loyalty to the organization have finally been rewarded with a promotion. As he takes his morning shower, his mind races, turning over the possibilities that this new chapter might bring.
Okay.
Up to the potential challenges, just how dangerous is this new anomaly? What could possibly necessitate the building of a brand new site just to contain it? Whatever it is, these years of securing, containing, and protecting have prepared him. He's seen bizarre creatures, cursed places, and objects that defy the laws of physics. Whatever awaits him in his new position, he can handle it. He rinses the shampoo from his hair, letting his jitters flow down the drain with it, and switches off the water. He climbs out of the shower and turns to the foggy mirror. He sweeps a palm across the glass and meets his reflection's eyes. His serious expression catches him off guard, and he can't help but let his mind wander back to someone else who looked at him that way, with those stony gray eyes, such a long time ago. He and his brother had never gotten along, though they shared the same face, the same hair, and the same eyes.
Got you.
Couldn't have been more different. He was the screw-up, the one who couldn't focus in class and was always bumbling through life like a bull in a china shop. His brother was the golden boy, the smart student who could do no wrong. As the boys got older, he tried to climb out of his brother's shadow and tried to live up to their parents' expectations. But anything he did, his brother could do better. He got into a great college. His brother got into Harvard. He got a job. His brother got a more impressive one. He got a Honda. His brother got a Mercedes. He fell in love with a girl, and his brother married her. It seemed like he would never stand on his own, never be anything but the lesser version of a perfect man, a nasty little homunculus who just happened to be wearing the graven image of something greater than himself. On the night of his brother's wedding, the festering resentment had finally come to the surface. He remembers the night in bits and pieces, a harsh word, a fifth drink, a broken champagne glass. His brother said something that went too far, cut too deep. Without thinking, he shoved him just a bit too hard. He watched his brother fall, watched his head hit the corner of the table, and then he was still. Silent. He thought about turning himself in, but then another thought crossed his mind. Why ruin two futures at once? His brother was gone. There was no coming back from that. Should he really spend the rest of his life in prison over a tragic mistake? It didn't seem fair.
You killed your brother.
planned. For once, he was grateful for the similarities between him and his brother. Their handwriting, for instance. He forged a note to his brother's new bride, telling her that he couldn't take the pressures of his life anymore. He was leaving, fleeing to Europe to start a new life, with a new name, and leaving all of his old ties behind. Then he packed his brother's body, the one that looked so much like his own, into a suitcase.
Into a suitcase. Yo, this guy is deranged. I'm sorry. I don't care how much I dislike my brother. I would never do that. I'm sorry.
He drove out into the
I'm
woods,
sorry. I can't do that.
gotten lost with his children. He buried it so deep, no one
Family is key, bro.
he'd
But
never forget how he felt that night. Laboring
I feel it though.
face an unpleasant mess of snot and tears, the end of his shovel piercing the dirt again and again, until he'd made a big enough hole to consign the case that now held his own brother's mangled body. Every shovel full of dirt that he piled back on, hiding his sin, felt heavier than the last. What had he done? What the hell had he done? By the time the grim deed was concluded, rationalizations had smoothed out the hard edges of his crime. There were a million reasons this was okay. This was justified. It was an accident, of course, that much was clear. But didn't his brother also have it coming, for flaunting his perfect life in his face for all these years? And who was the worthless chunk of dead meat now? The scales were balanced once more.
Wow.
No one would ever know what he did. No one but him, in those moments where he could see his brother in the mirror, reminding him of his greatest shame, no matter how hard he tried to forget. But that moment is long gone. He's back in the present now, grounding himself with a splash of cold water on his face. He shakes off the memories and dresses for the day. It's time to get to work. When he arrives at the facility, he's shocked by what he sees. It's a castle, grand and imposing, even if the years have not been particularly kind to it. The Foundation did not build this structure, though they've set up shop inside now. His reminiscence has made him late, and he hasn't even had a chance to...
Oh, he work at the Foundation though.
Site director. What does it even matter if you're a little late?
What the hell? You got a better job. You are a site director. You got a better job that your brother could never get. You got that jealous? Wow. No.
Just the thought of it is enough to make his chest swell with pride. He will have to ask someone to fill him in, an eager subordinate who won't mind going over the basics of the new facility and what they are here to study. Like clockwork, a young assistant researcher scurries up to him, holding a clipboard and practically vibrating with energy. She clearly hasn't been working here long. There's still light behind her eyes. He thinks to himself, the things you see here will snuff that out soon enough, my dear. The assistant researcher leads him inside the castle, its guts ripped out and replaced with sleek modern technology. The stone staircase has been swapped out for a row of elevators, marble busts exchanged for security cameras and monitors. They enter one of the elevators, and the assistant presses the button for the lowest possible floor. They are going deep into the bowels of the castle, into the belly of the great beast. With a ding, the doors open, and they step out. The air down here has a peculiar smell, musty and dull, with a sharp metallic tang of dried blood. Along the wall, he can see a row of prison cells, 8 of them to be precise, all shut tight. They're rusted and old. They've been here for quite some time. The Foundation didn't put these here. Of course, he realizes with a sinking feeling in his stomach that he can't quite explain. These cells themselves must be the anomaly he's here to supervise the containment of. He should have read the file before arriving, shouldn't have let himself get distracted. Then he would know what he's walking into. So here we are, the assistant chirps, startling the man. He had almost forgotten she was standing next to him. Shall I give you the grand tour? She won't last long here with such a chipper attitude, he thinks, but he nods just the same. She walks ahead of him, referring dutifully to her clipboard as she goes. This is the first cell. As you can see, all of them are currently inactive. We'll be performing some tests later, though, and you'll hopefully get to see them in action. It's really something. She continues walking to the second cell. There are a lot of potential applications for this anomaly that, once we understand it, could be incredibly promising. He's only half listening as he trails behind her. As they near the third cell, the assistant glances back at him. I really look forward to working with you, sir. I've heard such great things. He opens his mouth to brush off the praise, to feign humility for her sake, when a sound startles him. The grind of metal against metal, the screech of a long disused door. The third cell is opening on its own. The assistant flips through her notes, growing pale. This isn't supposed to happen. This shouldn't be happening. She stammers, but he barely hears a word. He's staring, transfixed, at the darkness within. There's a rattling sound, like chains being dragged across a stone floor. What is about to be unleashed from this prison? He braces himself, remembering all of the near-death experiences he's faced down in the past. Nothing could prepare him for what finally appears. A pair of iron shackles, attached to lengths of chain, shoot out from the shadows, headed right for him. A shackle clamps suddenly around each of his wrists, the cold metal tight enough to cut off the circulation, digging into his skin. Then, an invisible force on the other end of the chains begins to pull.
Oh.
He fights it, the shackles cutting into him as the assistant screams for help, but his efforts are futile. Whatever wants to pull him closer, whatever is trying to lock him away, it's far stronger than he could ever be. The chains yank him inside the cell, and the door slides shut behind him with a crash. He thinks for just a moment that he could see his brother laughing. Then, he's gone, leaving only an empty cell and a traumatized assistant behind. Sometimes the sins of the past come back to haunt you, and unfortunately for this particular man, there's no statute of limitations when it comes to SCP-567, or the Dungeon. In case the nickname wasn't clear enough, the Dungeon is not the sort of place you would ever want to be confined. SCP-567 is a series of 8 cells located beneath Foundation Site 41. Each cell has a designated number from SCP-567-1 through SCP-567-8. Most of the time, the cells are inactive and indistinguishable from any ordinary prison cell. However, when someone that one of the cells deems to be guilty of a specific offense enters their proximity, the anomalous properties of SCP-567 become abundantly clear. Each cell punishes a specific horrible act. SCP-567-1 targets those who have committed theft. 2 punishes sexual violence. 3 and 4 punish various types of murder. 5 punishes adultery. 6 and 7. I'm afraid I can't quite make out what it says. Someone appears to have deliberately scratched out the text in the file. As for SCP-567-8, whatever wrongdoing it chooses to penalize is still unknown, and it is never activated in the entire time the Foundation has known of it. Every other cell is completely empty, but 567-8 contains one single, antique wooden chair in the center of the room, nailed to the floor. The purpose of this chair is unclear. When an individual who has committed one of the aforementioned acts comes within 2.5 meters of their corresponding cell door, a pair of shackles will shoot out from within the cell, seemingly materializing out of nowhere. These shackles will then lock around the individual's wrists and drag them inside, at which point the cell door will slide itself closed and lock, and the prisoner and shackles will disappear. Multiple researchers have compared this anomaly, both in its function and its methodology, to SCP-1002, or Demisers, and SCP-2701, or True Solitary Confinement, which I have discussed at length before. Since the Foundation first contained SCP-567, only 2 prisoners have ever reappeared after being taken. 68 hours after he was first placed inside SCP-567-3, D-903912 escaped and was found collapsed on the ground just outside Site-41. He died only moments after reappearing, before any medical intervention could take place. An autopsy
Damn.
Writer that transforms your ideas into fully developed chapters.
An autopsy showed severe injuries, including lacerations, internal bleeding, and burns on his wrists and ankles. The second subject to ever return was D-937122, who was found 157 months after being locked in SCP-567-6. In spite of her injuries, which included head trauma, missing fingers, and the same burn marks on her wrists and ankles, this subject had a great deal more energy and attempted to attack the Foundation personnel that found her. She was subdued by several guards, restrained, and interrogated by an unnamed agent. Thankfully, an audio log of the interview was included in the file, giving us a sense of what transpired. "Please state your name," the agent began. D-937122 did not respond. "Please state your name," they repeated. Again, no response. The agent sighed heavily and changed tactics. "Look, I'm very sorry, and I want to help you. But we can't give you medical attention unless you cooperate with us, so please state your name for the record." At long last, the D-Class responded with an intense outburst. "My name? You want to know my name? Screw my name! There is no name, there is no anything! But there is. I escaped. I got the medal off, none of the..." And here the audio was corrupted to the point where I couldn't understand what was being said. After the interference clears, D-937122 could be heard shouting, "I should be free! Let me go!" A struggle followed as she attempted to escape custody. The agent then replied, in an attempt to calm the D-Class down, "I apologize, but now we have the opportunity to Screw your opportunity. There is no opportunity. There's only escape. You called me a monster. Maybe I am one. But the nightmares, they... She briefly broke down into unintelligible mumbling before returning to normal speech. Compared to their crimes, I've done nothing wrong. Nothing at all. I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing. At this point, the D-Class became inconsolable, all coherent speech dissolving into sobs. The agent attempted to calm her down, but she remained hysterical. After several moments of sobbing, the D-Class began to gasp, as if she was having difficulty breathing. She clutched her chest and began to go into apparent cardiac arrest. The agent attempted to administer CPR, but it was unsuccessful, and after a few minutes, she was dead. An autopsy was ordered following the interview, which revealed the apparent cause of her death. Her body was covered with tiny punctures, and a toxicology report revealed an unknown poison in her bloodstream. Though only 2 people have ever emerged from SCP-567, they were not the only organic life forms to break out of the dungeon's cells. Every so often, the doors of a cell will open, and an entity will emerge.
Ew.
These creatures are given the designation SCP-567-9.
Ew.
Always aggressive. They do not usually match the description of any existing animal, instead appearing to be some sort of undiscovered creature. Once an instance of SCP-567-9 has escaped its cell, it will attempt to leave the dungeon and attack anything that gets in its way. The first instance of SCP-567-9 observed by the Foundation was a 4-limbed creature approximately 2 meters in length. It walked on all 4s, but had human-like hands on its front limbs, complete with opposable thumbs and sophisticated enough mobility to operate machinery. It was highly intelligent and used this intellect to take out 14 Foundation operatives before it was contained. The details of SCP-567-9-2 have been stricken from any official documentation. The only thing I can surmise from the file is that 9 personnel were killed after it appeared, and one of the agents that helped contain it requested and received psychological counseling for what they experienced during the process. So whatever it was he encountered, it wasn't anything good. During a round of routine testing with SCP-567-4, while the cell door was open, an instance of SCP-567
That's nasty.
appeared, attacking and killing the researcher leading the tests. The entity was not contained, but after 7 casualties, was lured back towards its original cell. At this point, the cell deployed its shackles, and the creature was pulled back inside. The most recent instance of SCP-567-9 emerged when the door to SCP-567-7 opened and closed spontaneously. This was spotted on the CCTV footage, but none of the security monitoring the video could see anything leaving the cell. 2 weeks later, an agent assigned to the dungeon was found dead in his home. Dead.
Ew.
The circumstances of his death were virtually identical to those attributed to SCP-966, a nightmarish species of creature known as the Sleep Killer, which I've discussed here on the channel before. When the escaped entity was found in Site-41, it was found to resemble an instance of SCP-966, with only a few variations. It was successfully contained, and the on-site security cameras were upgraded to prepare for future anomalies like it.
Got you.
Though many specifics are missing from the file, including the exact appearances of the creature that emerged from the cells, I have deduced one thing. Wherever SCP-567 is transporting those it deems guilty, it is a prison for monsters of all species. Humans are not the only ones it wishes to hold accountable for their crimes. As I was reading about the dungeon and the various tests involving it, a rather morbid question came to mind. What would happen to a test subject guilty?
Have you ever wanted to build
Wow. So basically, it's a solitary confinement for evil people.
Guilty of more than one crime. Hell would claim them. Well, fortunately for my curiosity, and unfortunately for him, one D-Class found out.
Oh, how bad is he?
200 was used
I'm listening. Like, this is...
studies of SCP-567. He was placed in front of SCP-567-6 and 7. Almost instantly, the cells rattled open, and the shackles shot out to grab him. His left wrist and ankle were ensnared by Cell 6, and his right were trapped by Cell 7. Then, he was pulled into both cells. Well, part of him was, at least.
Oh.
I best explain his fate without causing too much distress. Have you ever held a wishbone in your hand at a family dinner while your sibling or cousin held the other side, and you both pulled until it broke? It was a bit like that. SCP Foundation Site-41 has been established in the abandoned castle that contains SCP-567 in order to prevent any civilians from coming across it. The entrance to the dungeon is kept sealed at all times, and the doors to each of the cells are monitored via CCTV. If any door is opened without authorization, Task Force Delta 9, also known as HAX,
will be deployed to contain the resulting instance of SCP-567-9. If, for any reason, it cannot be contained, the task force is permitted to terminate. In order to prevent the unnecessary loss of any personnel, all applicants to join Task Force Delta 9
Gotcha.
must have a clean criminal record, have never committed a crime at all, even at the behest of the Foundation, have a strong dedication to the law, and show loyalty to the social contract and the feelings of others. A robust moral compass is considered a vital qualification to work near SCP-567, lest they become simply one more victim added to its long list of tortured penitents. The Foundation has encountered many anomalies over the years that could pose a danger to the organization itself. SCP-567 is no exception. Untold numbers of Foundation operatives have committed terrible acts in the service of the greater good. They have lied, stolen, and even killed in order to protect and contain the secrets locked away in files and behind heavily guarded walls. A great deal of caution should be used when dealing with the dungeon, no matter how justified a person thinks their past sins might be. After all, there's no chance to plead your innocence, and the very prison that plans to hold you is also the judge, jury, and executioner.
Mm.
The plan had sounded so simple.
All right, that'll be it for today. I'll be back again tomorrow at 11. Hopefully I can see y'all there.